Hello po. Can you hear me? Hello, ate. Kamusta po?
Hi, Joey.
Hello there. I can see
Oh,
myself.
I see you now. Yeah.
Hi, kamusta po? Thank you for coming so right on time. You're very prompt.
No problem. I'm just sitting here anyway, so I decided to just
Just
check
getting
in.
checking na. So how was your day po?
It was good. Today is my day off,
Oh, I see.
so it's always a chance to do all of the household things.
Nice. Got daughter's laptop. I can hear. Is that? Just want to check. Po, is that somebody scrolling or is it? Oh, okay. Maybe that's from the background.
Is it still? I have a very old dog who's breathing heavily.
Oh, okay.
I
No
can
worries.
see if
No,
uh,
it's okay, madam. No, no worries. I just want to make sure it's actually something I'm hearing and not what because I thought I was hearing a what do you call that, a loop or feedback. Feedback.
Oh, okay. No, it's just Frankie.
Oh, Frank. Hello, Frankie. I'm able to borrow my daughter's laptop today as a monitor, so I don't have to turn my face. I borrowed that, so that would be good. Yeah, I heard that po when we were doing the talakayan, and I was trying to detect if it's an echo or feedback, but as long as it's not a feedback, we're good.
Okay. Well, yeah, I might be talking about my dog at some point in the podcast, so that will
Do that. Do that.
explain why.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll do an introduction. I will take this off. There you go. That's off. And well, this is just free flowing. I don't like. I have a formal kind of. I used to have a formal layout for when I was doing this just audio only. This is the first
Hmm.
time doing podcast with a video. Um, so the other episodes are audio only. Some of them I have to redo and do it on video. But yeah, let's just bring it. I'm just gonna introduce you, Pop, and then we'll start.
Okay,
All
let's
right.
do it.
Awesome. In three, two. Just want to make sure I'm on focus. Yes. Three, two, one. Hello, hello. Good evening, mga kababayan all across Canada. This is your host, Joey Salvador, and this is the Filipino Canadian podcast. We are going around the country and touching on notable Filipino Canadians who are making a big impact in our society here in Canada as Filipinos. And one of our special uh, in our lineup of guests, one of our special guests for tonight is none other than the very first journalist and news anchor at CBC, Madam Marivel Taruc. Let's give her a big hand. Let's welcome her in. Hello po.
Hi, Joey. Kamusta?
Kamusta? Very, very good. Thank you for joining us. And what a pleasure. It's like many years ago since I last saw you now, just like a week ago.
Oh,
Kamusta?
I know, but it's 2020, so everything feels like it's lasting forever.
I know, eh? So, ever since the lockdown, do you feel like time goes faster or slower?
Like I feel, and we've discussed this with my colleagues. It feels like it goes really slow and fast all at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it shouldn't make sense, but because see, I'll use an example of our talakayan last week,
That's right.
and it's only been about a week since, but it also feels like it was a long time ago
That's right.
too. So it's just been time is strange these days.
Well, I felt that it was just yesterday when we had that Talakayan. I was just watching a documentary, a science documentary. They said when things are happening uh, intensely, you feel time goes fast. But when things are happening like non-memorable, sort of like just the everyday
Mm,
things go slow, something like that. So, but for me, I felt like March when we locked down was just
mhm.
yesterday. So the whole thing went fast for me. Anyways,
You know, I just on that, I had to do, it was, I think in October, yeah, it was in October, we had to do a 6 month retrospective of the pandemic because it was the 6 month anniversary of Ontario declaring a state of emergency. And we
Really?
had to go through, at work, we had to go through all of the different news stories that we did from March, all about the pandemic. And there were so many things that happened that we forgot about, but it was all pandemic related. So
Yeah.
I guess all of us were just trying to process so much stuff that's gone on in the last, I guess, 7 months now, that
seven
I think
months
our
now.
brains are always in overdrive.
I felt. I think maybe. Okay. Yeah. 4 more months to the anniversary in March. Is that right? 3 more months or something like that. But I don't know if I mentioned this to you, madam. We were actually staying at the Royal York for almost 8 weeks because my wife is a nurse, and it was part of the trip for frontline healthcare workers. They said, maybe we don't want you to be exposed out there because you're here, and she's in charge of a COVID ward. So they gave her
Oh,
like almost 8 weeks. We are at the Royal York, staying there, sort of isolating ourselves. Well, initially it was just her for 4 weeks, and then we joined her because it's getting too lonely for her, and then we were
yeah.
like 6 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, then of course she had to isolate, I guess, and then four
Well,
weeks later you joined.
maybe 3 weeks into the lockdown, they gave her that hotel stay, and she was there for like 3 weeks by herself, and then we joined in later on, and so we were with her for like 4 more weeks. I think a little bit more.
What was that like, those first few weeks, and then with your wife away from the family for that long? Plus, also possibly exposing herself to this virus that I remember in March we didn't know as much about it.
We had a lot of fear because I have underlying conditions. She also has underlying conditions that it's we are the candidates that you could say we should never ever get COVID because it's almost.
Oh,
Yeah, but we were scared, and I remember going to Costco, bringing home the grocery, and I let everybody go in first, and I'll wipe every single item in the trunk of my car before I bring it home to our apartment.
mm-hmm.
But eventually, we got so tired of the routine of cleaning up. I boiled everything before we use the utensils and everything, and then we just got tired, and since we don't get sick, I feel like actually we probably were doing enough already to protect ourselves. And ever since, nobody got sick. We'll have the common colds and sneezes and all that, but it will go away.
Oh, well, thank God that everybody's safe. But I think that's sort of what's helped me reevaluate what's important this year. Because there's so many people who are struggling now, and it makes you realize. For me, my whole family is healthy too, and thank God for that. And my husband and I have both managed to stay working.
Yeah.
So I always think that those are the two things that um, people are really suffering from right now. And for me and my husband and our family to be healthy and employed, that's all I need right now.
Yes, we are very thankful that. Well, I'm self-employed. Even before the pandemic, I was like working from home already, so it was nothing new to me to be staying home. The only thing is, my daughter now stay home with me because of the virtual schooling. Initially, I
Mm-hmm.
was dreading that because it takes a lot of time to help a child go through that. But she's very good, and the teacher's very good. So I don't have to do anything anymore. I can do my work here, and she's doing her schooling on the couch, and it works fine. So, and your kids are schooling virtually as well, madam?
My older daughter, she is in second year university, and she is doing virtual. And my younger daughter is in grade 5. So we made the choice to send her in person. It was such a hard decision, though,
Yeah.
because So like my older daughter, she's 19, very responsible, and we would trust her if she had to be in person, but she had no choice. All the universities are virtual, as you know. Um, but here we are, and my husband and I are doing a lot of work from home, and here we are sending our youngest, our 10-year-old daughter, off to school. So it was difficult to decide, but she's been there since the start of school, and I think we're happy. Like, thankfully, again, there's been no exposure. She's been safe too. But it's been so important to have her in the classroom. I think for her, she's a social child, so she needed to be around in her classmates and with her teacher. So,
Yeah, I was. This is an interesting time that we're in. That's why I also decided to go full throttle on my online podcasting and the Talakan and the town hall. I feel like we are spending so much time, even myself in the first few months. Every single day, I will do commentaries on Doug Ford's announcements and the mayor's announcement. And then I find myself focusing on the fear so much. I feel like, I don't want to do anything else but just focus on the pandemic. So I realized it might be a breath of fresh air to kind of, while being careful, let's remember how it was like outside of the lockdown. And so I did a lot of podcasts talking to people other than the lockdown, other than the virus. So just that kind of give back a little bit of sense of our normalcy, the way it was before.
mm-hmm. I think we're craving that a lot more now because of the fatigue that's setting in around the pandemic, and we don't really know there are vaccines and they seem to be successful, but nobody even really knows when things are going to go back to normal. And I think we're just craving that, even just the discussion to shift, so that we're not always talking about. I know for us too, it's been the only story for months and months and months. And a couple of times when we've done our newscast, when we didn't lead with COVID, it was like, oh, finally, we don't have to talk about it.
Exactly. Every
Mm-hmm.
single day, I bring my wife. I remember being the only car on the road because she's essential worker, and I have to bring her ID with me just in case I get stopped. That I'm bringing her to work, and yeah, it was a very dystopian movie for a while, and I felt like,
Yes.
okay, you know what? Let's shift away from focusing on this. We have to be careful. Do not take it for granted, and do not pretend it's not happening. But at the same time, we need to have that interaction, that social, um, that sanity. So that's the reason I started talking to Filipinos in our community and get to know their stories. And I get to hear a lot of stories. And today, it's your
Mm-hmm.
story, madam. I'm so excited. I heard big part of your story last Wednesday last week when you had your keynote and you gave us a very sufficient already 20 minutes run down of leading up to your career and your childhood. And when you were giving your keynote, oh, I have so many questions I want to ask Madam Marivel. But I invited all of this media rep, and I didn't want to take the whole airtime. I invited them so that they can interact with you. So I give them the opportunity, and I try to hold back and not ask you as much as my curiosity. One of the very curious part when you gave your keynote, you were talking about your dance group Carrie Lagan when you
Yes.
were in Winnipeg. I want you to talk a little bit about that. And also, I just want to mention before you talk about that, I actually went to school on my first grade because I went to St. Joseph's College from grade to grade six, which is normally a girls' school, but they made it into co-ed eventually in the 80s. But the year that I was not at St. Joseph's College, I went to this school called Our Lady of Karilagan. So I remember that name. I said, that sounds familiar. Where did I hear Karilagan? And then I remember, oh, that was my grade one school. It's called Our Lady of Karilagan. And I can't remember anymore what Carilagan means, but I think it's the name of a place. But tell us a little bit about that, Madam
That
Marivel.
I know it's so interesting because I danced for many years in Carilagan in Winnipeg, and there were probably two Filipino dance groups based out of Winnipeg, and both of them were very in demand because they because Winnipeg, I've talked about this before, was is a very multicultural city, and I think some people who don't know much about Winnipeg might be surprised to know that. But for my entire childhood growing up there, and even now, there's a big annual cultural festival called Folklorama, and so that was the big showcase every year that Karilagan would work towards. But then we would also perform at senior citizens' homes and charity events and everything. And it was, I look back at it now and I think what a really wonderful cultural experience for a Filipino child growing up in Canada um, was able to get. But I remember at the time it was just fun. I had friends and we got to do these really cool dances. Like I was one of the ones who did dinikling, and I tried to explain to my daughters like this. Your mom was so cool because she could do tinikling because we've seen those performances, right? It takes a lot of skill. But I
Yeah.
was probably 9 or 10 years old when I learned tinikling, and we did that and got to learn about all of the different, because the Philippines itself is also very diverse too.
First,
There's so many different cultures that make up the Philippines too. And without it being like a formal history lesson or a lesson on culture, we got to absorb and learn about all of that as kids growing up in Canada. So I was very lucky. We learned about, just how difficult it was to plant rice, because there's a dance that,
yeah.
it's like you're bending over and you just keep doing this over and over again. That's one of them. So we learned how difficult planting rice is. We learned about the Spanish colonialism in the Maria Clara.
Yes.
Um, Beautiful dresses, and even the strong Muslim population in the Philippines
Wow.
too. And there's a dance to represent all different parts of Filipino culture. So when I look back at it, and I think that I was very lucky. Both my ate and I danced in Carilagan for many years, and um, I wish at the time I could appreciate what it was teaching us. I have to admit I didn't, but I certainly now, and I thought about maybe putting my own kids in a Filipino dance group so that they could learn the same, because their dad is Puti, my husband's Puti, so they don't even have the same amount uh, of experiences with the Filipino culture that I did. It never happened. I just tell them about when I was in a Filipino folk dance.
Well, I remember I was watching a CBC 20 rapid questions that somebody did with you. Where you're walking
Mhm.
down, oh, you're going down the elevator. You're going to, I guess, to your studio or your newsroom, and one of the questions there is, oh, "What do you wish you could do?" And I remember your answer was, "Sing like my daughters." How many
Mm.
daughters do you have, madam?
I have two, and my older one is that they both have beautiful voices. I don't know where that comes from. They didn't inherit it from me, but I'm also very musical. Maybe that's why. And my older daughter actually went to a high school for the performing arts, and so she was very focused on singing and acting in musical theater for most of her high school years, and she really flourished. And so we would go and watch, like proud parents, every year, the annual musical at her high school. And two of those years that she had the lead role, and so we got um, it was a really exciting time for our family to go and cheer her on. Like our whole family went, like my husband, our younger daughter, and then my sister and nephews and niece, my mom, everybody. So like half the theater was there to support my daughter Maya. So there, and then my younger daughter too is very interested, and she sings all the time. And I'm just like, where do they get these voices from?
Oh, that's awesome. You know, you probably, I'm sure you've seen many of this. I don't know if you can call it a phenomenon, but ever since American Idol became a big hit, year after year, there's American Idol and there's America's Got Talent and there's X Factor, and all of these many times when it comes to like singing competition, we started seeing a lot of Filipino talents that are like ordinary Janes and ordinary Joes. They almost like nobody. They just are YouTubers or whatever. All of a sudden, we see a big rise. What do you think about this, man?
I think yes, we watch all of those competition reality shows too. And every time there's a Filipino, I still get so excited, even though it's almost common now, right? But I'm just like my husband, look, there's another everything. But I think it must be rooted in our culture.
Yeah. Yes.
We must have that. And I guess, even when I was in Carilagan, we also sang a lot of Filipino folk songs. And so I think there's so much around singing and telling stories that's part of our culture. And I would say to my husband too, like if you go to the Philippines, you can probably on every street, there's somebody who can sing like Celine Dion. Like
Yeah.
it's just that, and because we are so good at karaoke, right? I know it's a stereotype, but we're really good at that.
Well, I
So
think I don't mind it. It's a good stereotype, I think.
one that we all live up to, right? I
Yes.
keep saying, you're in a Filipino house when the moment you walk in the door, they're offering you food and handing you a mic.
Here's your adobo and this.
Yes. And what song will you be singing
Yeah,
tonight?
what song will you be singing? Yes, exactly. You know, one thing that I am impressed about the story that they gave us during the Talakayan, early on, what I understand with your story is that early on, you kind of know what you want to do. You kind of sort of, I'm going to ask that question to you. When was that pivotal moment when you realize, okay, journalism, this is what I'm going to do? Because I want to ask a question because I'm the opposite. I'm like,
Hmm.
never knew. I was like, I'm already in college. I was taking mass communication, and then I shift to psychology, and then I'm a jack of all trades. What you can say,
Hmm.
jack of all trades. Although media has been sort of like, I was also a photojournalist in college. So I've been into like those demonstration, the riots and everything. I was in the middle of it taking photos, and my editor really loved when I take the photos of like on the act, kind of like somebody throwing a Molotov bomb,
Mm.
or like the barbed wires and the fire. They love that about my photos. But that was for me, okay, I love doing that, but it doesn't necessarily told me, okay, this is it, this is what I'm gonna do. And then I love music, but it also didn't tell me, oh, I'm gonna be a pianist or a musician. It's so there's so many things I liked, but I couldn't determine, oh, this is what I'm gonna be. Um, uh, uh, an illustration I want to. You have kids. I don't know if did they watch the B movie that produced by Jerry Seinfeld when they were kids?
Yeah, the animated movie.
Yeah, the B movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my older one saw that. Yeah.
There's a line there in the B movie when Jerry Seinfeld, his character, was saying, the same job for the rest of my life, because they have to choose a job, right, as bees. And then that resonated to me because when I was a young person, I cannot choose just one. I feel like I'm gonna be. But tell me about what was the pivotal moment for you, madam, when you realized, oh, I'm gonna be a journalist.
Well, it was very, very early on. And I think, well, first of all, I think your route is the norm. Like, I think more people have to, it takes them a while to figure out exactly where they want to take their lives, and they're passionate about something, but then they want to be practical, and there's a lot of decisions into going into, when a bee has to decide what they're going to do for the rest of their lives, they have to be pretty sure that they're happy with that. But for me, it was just, I think it was really planted in, I was probably just still in elementary school, because, and I've talked about this in the Talakayan, which is every night my parents watched CBC News. And I guess because I was also very curious, I was always asking questions. I remember driving my parents crazy. Why this? Why that? How come that's happening? Who is this? Whatever. It was nonstop. Plus, I am still very madaldal, so it felt like that. It makes sense, to combine these things that just came naturally to me. And it was maybe, so I kind of, it was floating around in my head as an idea. But of course, I also considered all of the usual, I would say, traditional Filipino aspirations when it comes to pursuing a career, right? So of course, I thought about law, I thought about medicine, I thought about teaching, all of those things. But it was always in the back of my mind was this journalism. So it was maybe in junior high where I got really serious about it and did some research and figured out what the pathway is to becoming a journalist. And thankfully, I guess I was lucky because I had certain teachers who saw that this is what I was passionate about, and guided me and gave me advice. Because back then, so that would be over 30 years ago,
Yeah.
journalism wasn't a popular career. And I don't think a lot of people had advice, and certainly not many had any experience in journalism who I could sort of turn to ask. But I did have teachers who were like, oh, this looks like something that you'd be good at and something you're interested in. Well, you should consider these universities and stuff like that. So I'm a rare kind of person who had their mind made up. I wouldn't be good at anything else. Let's put it that way. Like medicine, that dream ended very quickly. I'm terrible at math. I didn't do well in science. So I'm where I need to be, I think.
Oh, I think it's a blessing that you found your calling, because you've been here and you're still enjoying it and you're still active. And but knowing Filipino kids, the youth culture, Filipino youth culture, even when, because I'm a digital marketer, that's why I got involved in the media. That my business is about creating promotional um, social media promotions for live events, concerts, and all that. That's how I got involved in independent media in the community. But I know, making decisions on what kind of content to produce, I know that things about politics and news don't have a lot of viewership usually, because the youth culture is all about kantahan, sayawan. The entertainment part is very strong in the Filipino culture, and
Mm-hmm.
the politics and all that is for like more the serious type. But knowing your story, that you're very active in dance and that um I thought you might be drawn into like more fun stuff. Although for me, I see journalism as fun, but not everybody sees it as fun, right? I would imagine most Filipino, the youth culture sees dancing and singing as fun.
Oh, yeah. Or I think the closest you might be able to get to connecting with the younger Filipino generation is if you present it as infotainment. So
Infotainment.
somehow, um, it's sort of, the platform is something. I mean, social media is the platform for the younger generations anyway, be it Filipino or any other culture. So that's often the way, and even we're learning this too in the journalism profession, is in order to connect and to reach out with the younger generations, you have to kind of go to where they are, and that is social media. So what you're doing with digital marketing, I mean, you must have a much better understanding of how to make that connection, because everybody is on social media. So how do you stand out and become that thing that this generation is interested in? And even what I do, I mean, primarily I've been a broadcaster, a broadcast journalist, but even broadcasting is sort of, it's had to shift. When I went to university, you had to choose in your final year whether you would specialize in television broadcasting, in radio broadcasting, or in print journalism, so newspapers and magazines. So we were separated. That doesn't exist anymore. There's no option to do television broadcasting because because a lot of the younger generation, I don't know many of them who own a TV to watch traditional TV. I mean, they might have a smart TV so they can watch Netflix. So even for me, like, I've had to make this shift along with the profession, that a broadcast journalist essentially no longer exists. Now you're a multi-platform
Mm.
journalist, and hopefully in there somewhere, if you put up an interesting 40-second video on Instagram, that younger people will be interested in it, and they might learn something
Mhm.
important about current affairs all at the same time. But it's such a challenge, and certainly with Filipinos who are new to Canada,
Yes.
because they're trying to find their place, or where to belong. And I know for many of them, that's a struggle. So they have to, reaching out to them through what I do is can be really difficult.
I knew that writing an outline for me will never work because when I have a conversation, it always branches to other things that my interest gets piqued, and I want to go there. Forget about the outline. But one thing that I like about your brand of journalism, Madam, you're being an anchor of our Toronto. I think that's the fun journalism because you get to talk about restaurants and food
Mm.
and music artists and fashion. I think that's what our Toronto is, right? You're still active. Is that an active show still, right?
Yep. Yep. We'll be taping tomorrow. I'm going to shoot an interview for a story, and then we'll tape the program. We tape every Friday so that it's edited and ready for air the following that weekend.
Wow.
So yep. We had to take a break once the pandemic hit, because like every media organization, there was a lot of deploying of resources. So we
Mm.
took a break for a couple of months, but
Mm.
we've been back and still doing those. And it's interesting. It's a much more feature oriented program than a lot of other CBC News shows are. But in the same way, I like to think, anyway, the goal is the main feature that we do every week is about, it aims to be about somebody in Toronto doing something that's making a difference.
Yes.
And then around it too, there's a lot of the fun stories about, yeah, like which dog went viral this week on social media, or things like that. Or,
Mm.
but ideally it's to kind of give you a little bit of a breather from the heavy news cycle, which it's been nonstop this year more than ever. And often that's what some people have said about to me about why they watch the show, because that's what makes me curious about it. It's like, why do you watch? Because you could watch a million other things. And often the response is because it's a break. It's still informative, but it's a break from doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah,
So
so I'm good with
yeah,
that.
I know. I even when I published the promo for our Talakayan, I already got some older Filipinos telling me, "What are you guys doing? It's lockdown. How are you? Why you
Mm. I
madam?
saw that.
Madam, it's all virtual, Paul. Don't worry, it's all it's like so we get into that kind of train of thought. Everyone was focused on. I mean, we don't want to deny it, but we, let's not give it 100% of our energy. I would say because there will be life after this lockdown, and then, are we ready for it? We have to be ready now, in my opinion.
I think we're so. I mean, I mentally, I think everyone's ready. Like as soon as we can go back to some kind of normal, I think we all are ready for that.
It's like the first day of summer. Hello, everybody comes to the beach.
The last day of school, ready.
Ready. Let's
Yeah,
go. Run out.
yeah, totally like that.
That's awesome. I had an opportunity for last Sunday night to have a question and answer with Dr. Leslyn Lewis, the contender for the leadership with Erin O'Toole.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her some questions about, because I work with both the liberals and the conservatives and the NDP, because I'm a digital marketer. I propose my business to all parties, right? Um, for the conservative, I was talking to her about this new movie that came out on Netflix called The Trial of the Chicago Seven. I wonder if you heard about this movie. It's about those activists in the 60s and the 70s when America was drafting a lot of men for Vietnam. And so they come out in droves to protest. But what reminded me of that movie and my involvement in activism back in the Philippines, you almost don't feel like an activist when you attend some events because it's all revolving around music, about youth culture, about people dancing on the
Mm.
streets. And I think that's how they embed the messaging, because young people just want to come out and have listen to music, and in the music, the lyrics of music are all political. You don't get to realize until you're so immersed into the music already, right? So yeah, that I kind of miss that kind of political scene in the Philippines and back in the 60s in the States.
It's interesting what will motivate a protest or a demonstration. And we've seen so many this year and all around the world. But of course, in the United States, it's been such a flashpoint. And um, one thing I am noticing when it comes to younger generation is they've they kind of, I feel like there is more protest now, and a lot of it is led by a younger generation. And I think maybe as compared to, so I'll be 50 next year, and I don't. It's okay. It's okay. Uh, I've accepted it. It's fine. um,
There's the levels of the denial and then the acceptance and then the embrace. Me
yeah,
too.
no, denial is. I'm past denial. That I can say that at least. But I think when I was growing up, and maybe because the world was in a, you know, maybe there wasn't anything close to home that was worth going out into the streets and protesting over. But I see so much of that now, both in, in my profession, because we cover a lot of those demonstrations, and the movements, but also from my own my own kids, my daughter and her contemporaries. They kind of see how the grown-ups have messed everything up. And I think there's a sense of, like, when you're young, you kind of feel like you have the answers to everything.
Yeah.
There might be in that kind of spirit that they are like, okay, you grown-ups don't know what you're doing. Like, let us handle things here. And I take a lot of hope in that, actually, because also they're taking responsibility for their own futures, and they see a direction that they don't want their futures going in. A lot of them are just willing to go, this is wrong, and here's what I think, here's what I believe, and let's all join together and organize a movement, a rally, something like that. So I think there's reason to be hopeful in that. I think unlike my generation, maybe we didn't find a cause to rally around. Um, there's so many right now, unfortunately, um, for people and especially for young people
Yes,
to kind of choose and really become part of a movement. It's fascinating to watch.
it is. And what kind of like if I can use the word triggered me to open up that kind of conversation is because when you mention our age sometimes and my involvement with social media, I feel like social media sometimes I feel like I'm the 40-year old virgin wanna be mingling with all these young people when it comes to social media. That's just I like it because of the algorithm behind and understanding how things move in the digital world. So that I got fascinated about that. And then there's that what I see that in the U.S. Ron Paul, one of the oldest contender, understand this very early on. He was one of the digital um, uh, politicians, and then Obama capitalized on it, and Trump also is capitalizing on it in 2016 election. But in many political parties, I see that the liberals understand the digital part of message of bringing out the messaging, but the conservatives probably have they have a strong core belief, but the messaging they're low on the digital and low on the cool factor. Because I say every time I go to the events and the concerts and the festivals, a lot of liberals are mingling with the Filipinos. And so even though if they compare their core beliefs, sometimes maybe it doesn't always match, but they feel, oh no, we're liberals because they're here, they're cool with us. So I think the cool factor needs to come back so that young people understand politics, I guess, so that they
Hmm.
understand where they stand. Because right now, a lot of Filipinos in the Philippines are so involved, but here we don't care about politics. A lot of we don't care about what's going on. We're here, they're here, they have a better life, they got good income. That's all that matters now. Sometimes getting involved is not very strong in our community.
I'm interested in what you have the expertise in is sort of maybe digging into why that's the case. Because there's Filipinos have a long history of
Did I lose you, madam? Oh,
oh
oh,
no, I'm here.
all right. You
Can you
paused
hear
for a
me?
little. Now I can,
Oh,
but just 2 or 3 seconds there, you were frozen. So
oh,
maybe
okay,
start from the beginning of your sentence.
okay. Um, well, I think what I'm curious to get your insight on is why that is, why that's the case when, um, as a people, Filipinos have a history of um, of protest and calling for change, and whether it's fighting colonial rule or martial law or or and even the journalists who there's a long line of journalists who are speaking truth to power at their own peril.
Mm,
So there's so many to look to in the Philippines, and then it's kind of in our roots.
yeah.
But then, so what do you see when Filipinos are new to Canada, and then somehow either that I don't know if they lose it or they're just so overwhelmed by an adopted homeland that kind of takes a back seat. What do you think?
The biggest factor, I think, madam, is the difference of the uh, format of our political format in Canada is totally different from a lot of Filipino Americans are involved in American politics because there's that similarity of our government structure. The upper house and the lower house, the Congress, the Senate, the president. Here in Canada, we have the federal parliamentary system, which is kind of throwing off a lot of our young people understanding how things work, that you don't you don't elect the prime minister, you elect the party, things like that. So sometimes I was trying to express this with some of our elders in the community. I said, we need to have some effort to educate our young people, for them to understand what a federal parliamentary system is, so that they get involved, because I think that's the biggest hurdle. We don't get involved because uh, that's number one. Number two, there's not that drama. I think politics needs to be a little, there needs to be a little bit of drama and entertainment. In the Philippines, there's a lot of entertainment in politics. That's why a lot of young people get involved, and that's why I was saying, we need to get the young people come out, but they don't care to come out because they don't understand what's going on. That's number one. That's one of the questions I was wanna ask you, what your thoughts are, because in the states, do you know, madam, that they actually have the Bataan Death March every year in many parts of the states? Because our history, Philippine history and American history, has very strong affinity, right? We have a lot of
Yeah.
history together, fighting together. There's many Filipino who went to Vietnam, in North Korea, in the Second World War. Even last night, I was watching a story of someone um, who took a boat from the Philippines to Australia to flee away from the Japanese. The few hours after the Pearl Harbor, just few hours right after they attacked Pearl Harbor, they attacked Manila during the Second World War. And the hope was they get the reinforcement from Pearl Harbor, but no reinforcement came. That's why,
Nobody came. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the Americans tried to escape into Bataan every year in the states. And YouTube has been a blessing for researchers like me, because I see every year in many states they have a big Bataan Death March celebration, where both Americans and Filipinos will march to kind of commemorate every single year. We don't have that here in Canada, so that might be the disconnect. I think the positive thing is, from 2014 onwards, Philippines has now become the main source of immigration from 2014 onwards. So we still getting immigration from China and India and other parts of the world, but in 2014 the Philippines has become the main one. Um, but you've been here since the 70s, right, Adam?
Yeah. 74 is when we arrived.
Oh, so that's why I thought you might be my ate, because I was born the year before.
I
When
was still born before you.
yes, that's right. But what is your early memories of the 70s in Canada? Do do you still have memories of the Philippines, and do you go back to the Philippines once in a while?
I wish not as often as I would like to. Because I mean, work has been busy, and then we had a family, just all a number of reasons why. But I do have very vivid memories of even the first, like I was there for 3 years, and then we moved to Canada. But I remember living in the Philippines as a toddler. I think because I mean, most people don't have memories before the age of 4. But for some reason, I remember living there. I remember being with my lolas, and playing with my ate and my cousins. And I remember the day we left Philippines to fly to Canada. So I was 3 years old, but I remember that was back when your family, everyone could still go out onto the tarmac at the airport
Yes.
in Manila.
Uh-huh. And
And
you climb the stairs.
yeah,
There's no, yeah.
everyone has the picture, right, of like waving from the stairs to their sad family on the tarmac. And I
Oh,
remember that, and we were very, like, we were dressed up, of course, because we were flying to Canada. And I remember wondering why I was so dressed up.
70s is the glamorous days of flight too, right? Like, the movie
Yeah.
Catch Me If You Can, being a pilot and being a flight steward was like a glamorous, yeah, being in an airline.
Yeah, well now I wear leggings and sweatshirt when I'm going on a flight because I want to be comfortable. But when I was 3, we had little suits. My dad was wearing a suit. My mom
Wow.
was wearing a dress. Oh yeah, and
Wow.
yeah, I
Do you still have
remember.
those pictures?
Yes,
That would be
there's.
awesome.
It's like a black and white, and we have the sampaguita necklaces,
Sampaguita.
and everybody looks sad. That's I think maybe that's why it stuck with me was because I mean usually when our families, well, we all lived in the same village, so it's always very masaya,
Mhm.
and I remember everybody was sad. So I
Oh,
know that I didn't quite understand the full scope of what this meant. um, but I remember that day. I remember leaving and getting on the flight. Um, I remember well, so we moved to Winnipeg in November of 1974. So Winnipeg in the winter, you couldn't have had a more, I guess, I don't know,
culture
like,
shock.
yes, exactly.
Like a
Welcome to
baptism in
Canada.
fire, except it's in snow.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why, because it was such an extreme. So I remember landing at the airport in Winnipeg too and seeing nothing but white outside the door. And I ran to the door, and my mom was like chasing after me, like, no, don't, because I had to see what all this white stuff was outside.
Must have been so much fun. Yeah. If we were classmates, Madam Marvel, in let's say grade 5, grade 6, or in high school, describe to me who is Marvel through on lunch breaks and recess. Is she the one who loves to be active and play, or is she the one who likes to sit down and read a book or play with dolls with her friends? Who is Marivel Taruk back in her childhood life during recess and lunch at school?
Well, okay, would tell you that Marivel as a child was the same in the classroom, in the schoolyard, in the playground, all of it. Dal 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 everywhere. I was never the quiet one. My ate was the quiet one.
Oh,
I was always, and I that was all. I think the consistent thing that my teachers would tell my parents, at parent teacher, was she talks too much. Marivel talks too much. She socializes too much. So
that's
that
when
I
she's
would be. I know. So my daughters don't get in trouble. They can't get in trouble because, like, yeah, I know where that they get that from. Um, so that, and then same thing in high school. I was always, um, my friends. Well, we're all very. I mean, you're friends with people you're like minded with, and have a lot of things in common. But we were very in high school. We would have been the group that organized everything. So the student council representatives. I played a lot of sports in high school, so I was on a lot of the school teams, and I was in everyone's. I mean, I had a friend group, but I was also friends with lots of other people in my school because I was always one of the ones who would like rally the student body to say, okay, this is happening and you need to be there. Are you coming? Why aren't you coming? Like, so that was me. I'm sure if you ask some of the kids I went to high school with, I was really annoying because it was nonstop, nonstop.
well, I ask exactly the same question with all my other notable Filipinos that I interview for this podcast. And the question is, so you're one of the cool kids, huh, in school? You're
I
one of the
don't
freakouts.
know. I don't know if I was. Let's say there were a lot of cool kids, but no kid could escape me. I guess maybe let's put it that way.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't have a choice.
in the Philippines. One of a tradition in school life, we have what we call the fair. I think it is. I remember my daughter also here in Canada. Just end of the year, there will be a fair. But in the fair in the Philippines, it's a little different from what we do here. Of course, we have the booth. We have those. We have rides here in my daughter's school. They have the big bouncy castles, gigantic bouncy castles. It's like a real castle size. But in the Philippines, it's always there's the Philippine fair school culture is always there's the kissing booth, and then there's a certain
Oh.
certain kind of game where I can't remember how it works, but there's like a chasing game in the school fair where certain so in the North American vernacular is the cheerleader and the football quarterback, right, in North America, but in the Philippines it's usually the basketball um, captain ball and
Mm-hmm.
also the cheerleader, right? So we have so many similarities with American culture, I guess, even in Philippine school culture. Do you have something like that in Winnipeg? And were you one of those being chased around?
No, I think if I have to think too long about it, we didn't really like, and I think maybe you're also kind of describing the homecoming king and queen type
Yes, yeah, yeah.
scenario, or the prom king and queen. No, we didn't have anything like that.
Oh,
But I think if we did, I don't think I would have been the cheerleader or the prom queen. I think I would have been the one telling everybody what to do. Like, okay, now it's time to announce
oh,
who the
okay.
prom king and queen are. I would have been that person. I would be running the kissing booth.
That's
I'd be organizing the fair in the
you're the
Philippines.
organizer.
You're the bossy one. Yeah.
Well, the good point you were talking about on your keynote at the Talakayan, you were saying that Winnipeg per capita has more Filipinos. And I think that reflects all of our lifestyle as Filipino Canadians compared to our cousins in the South, the Filipino Americans, because they have 4 million Filipinos in the US. We only have a million here. But the ratio, they have 300 million total population, and we only have 38 or close to 40. So our ratio per capita Filipinos here in Canada, we are geared towards, making good influence in policies and everything. But we still don't have. We only have one MP so far, right? Was Winnipeg when you were growing up? I guess there's a lot of Filipinos in your school, right? Is there sort of like awareness of Canada, how maybe a Filipino can be an MP, in school system like the Filipinos? Do they think like that? That somebody can aspire for a place in government?
I think that Winnipeg, kids in Winnipeg, the Filipino community in Winnipeg is actually um, more politically active because we had the first Filipino member of parliament, and it was Dr. Ray Pagtacan, who was friends with my father. And so and I think I was in junior high maybe when he was first elected.
Mhm.
And even in provincial politics, there's Conrad Santos, who's an
Yeah,
NDP
yeah.
member of the Manitoba legislature. And
Was
since
that deputy?
then, mhm,
Mhm. I think you
yeah.
call it MLA maybe in Winnipeg. Is that what
Who?
I think you call it MLA, the provincial?
That's right. Yeah, member of the Legislative Assembly is
Yeah.
what they're called. And so we had representation. And later on, when I was an adult, then there were Filipinos. Actually, Dr. Bagdakan's one of his sons ran, and I think won for Winnipeg City Council. So, and then of course, this is one thing that's really great about Filipinos, and I think political parties recognize is, yes, there's a lot of us per capita, so it's if you can get the support of the community, you have a good chance, because we talk amongst ourselves, and if you kind of if you can get the community to rally support for you, you can be quite successful. And I think that's partly why Dr. Bagdakan won. He was in a riding that has a lot of Filipinos living in it, so we had a lot of support there. But Conrad Santos was an NDP. Dr. Bagdakan was Liberal, and city councilors. I mean, they're not politically affiliated, but
Yeah.
every time a Filipino would run for office, and there have been many who ran too. That's the thing; they might not have won, but many who've run. Um, there are tons of Filipinos who go out canvassing for them, and they could be conservatives. They could be from another, I guess, aligned with a different political group, but just because they're Filipino, they'll go and rally support for them. So I think maybe that, being raised in Winnipeg, we saw a lot of that, and my dad was really active in the community too. So oftentimes he would get me to go and knock on doors or hand out pamphlets, like that too. So I think for the young people, young Filipinos in Winnipeg, it's it's not that unusual, and I guess it might have inspired a number of them to be politically active, not necessarily run for office, but to be active.
Well, I wish we could transport that kind of culture in Winnipeg to the rest of the Filipinos in Canada, because I think the political parties are ripe when it comes to their giving serious attention to the Filipino vote and the Filipino that the Filipino population matters. The survey said that from 2011 to 2016, Filipino grew by 27% in Canada. The rest of Canada only grew by 5%. So there's this English professor on YouTube. He was saying, "Why do Canadians?" It was a long vlog. He was saying, "Why do Canadians love the Filipino immigrant?" And he gave so many points. And one of the final points that he laid out, he said, "Only the Filipino immigrants are not trying to change Canada." He was saying that the Filipino immigrants are close to the Canadians, the born native Canadians, because Filipinos are not trying to change Canada. We actually have a lot of similarity in our family culture, or in our culture as a people, to the Canadian culture. So, what do you think of that, man?
Well, it makes sense to me, and even from my own personal, and I don't know about you, but even from my own experience of immigrating and becoming part of Canada, it was so important for my dad and for my parents to learn about this country and its way of life, and adapting to that.
Yeah,
We like he didn't, his mentality wasn't, I'm gonna um, complain about this system because it's different. It's, I'm going to learn everything I can about this system so that um, I can live a harmonious life in my new country.
yeah, adopted country.
So I think maybe it's just, in many ways, for better or worse. I think Filipinos are happy, just happy to be here,
Yes.
and I think as a culture, there's a lot of respect and humility. So I almost think that we don't feel like it's our place to change how things run.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's always great, but I think it's helped Filipinos be highly regarded in Canada. Like there's, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? Oh, I love Filipinos, and you're all so friendly and hospitable and respectful and all of that, and that's something to be very proud of. But I've kind of thought over the last little while, and when I talked to Ate Pauline Corpus,
Barcelona. Yeah.
she talks a lot about Filipinos being seen,
Mm,
and don't be afraid to be seen, and don't be afraid to take your place.
that's right.
And I really took a lot from that, because even, we're raised to just, you have to respect the laws of the land, you have to respect your elders, all of this stuff. But I think that leads us to not question sometimes when we should be questioning things. And so I think that, combined with the size of our community in Canada, and the attention that political parties give to Filipinos, I think we probably have a lot more power and influence, or we could. than we do now. And but that comes with trying to motivate the community to be more politically engaged and
Hmm.
to take interest in our system and political system too. So it's kind of challenging, I know, because as you said earlier, like politics is dry, especially in Canada. It just kind of it's a machine that just keeps turning, and there's not really any crisis, thankfully. Um, but I think the community could hold a lot more influence and sway
All the
in Canada.
the community needs to step up. I think the political parties are ready for us to step up. I feel like it is a self-imposed perception from us to not uh, ruffle some feathers or rock the boat. I think that's us thinking about our involvement. But I haven't spoken to the leader of the Liberal Party yet, but I have spoken to both the outgoing Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole about what I think about the Filipino involvement. My impression is that they're saying, we want the Filipinos to be involved. And I recently, and I will also again this Friday interview Madam Raquel Dancho, who is actually from Winnipeg. She is the Shadow Minister of Immigration for the Conservative Party, and she's one of the youngest MP. She looks like she's in her 20s. What she is so the When I interact with her, she capitalizes on how she is involved in the Filipino community in Winnipeg. Like she
Mm,
celebrates that in our conversation, and the folklorama. She That's the first time I heard folklorama is from her. She told me how she gets to that and enjoy the folklorama dances. When I was a young boy, Madam Marvel, my uncles from the U.S. will come home as balikbayan, and they will tell us uh, they identify themselves as American. I remember,
mm-hmm.
I remember when they say, my uncle, one of my very proud uncle, who will say, ako Amerikano ako eh. Kaya when I go to the golf course, they treat me right. Parang ganon. But they identify as Americans. Here in Canada, we feel like we are Filipinos in Canada. I feel like we need to really starting identify. No, we are Filipino Canadians. We are Canadians who happen to have a Filipino ethnicity. And sometimes I use my Facebook like a Twitter. I was about to tweet this when Julius Azarcon was running for MP at York Center. I said, but I was careful. I didn't know what my white friends, my Canadian friends would think about it. But I tweet something like this. I said, one of the best things that happened to Canada is Filipino immigration. And then I think many times before I posted that. But then after I posted that, a lot of my white friends actually said, totally agree. We love the Filipinos. We love, of course, I'm
What was your dilemma? What made it difficult to kind of just hit post and
no, because I want to inject self-esteem and sort of pride as Filipinos, but I don't want to, at the same time, I don't want to say we're better than everyone. Like, I'm trying to kind of balance. We are, we're part of Canada. We're building Canada together, but I'm not saying, we're better than anybody else, sort of like that. And I feel like I don't want to step on people's toes saying that, hey, if not for Filipinos, this country. But in fact, I really think that if there's not a lot of Filipino caregivers, for example, I used to take care of my daughter hands on for 4 years. And I remember going on o- early morning play dates. Sometimes they have early morning play dates. And I live here in Forest Hill area. So there's a lot of wealthy Caucasians here. So my daughter we get invited to all these big houses here. And in the morning, I see the mom leaving the home to go to work and the nanny's coming in. The daughter's so happy, the kids are so happy when the nanny's coming in and the
mm,
mom's leaving. They don't even notice the mom leaving for work. On the other side of the day, at night, when the nanny's leaving to go home and the mom's coming home, the kids are crying. They're like, They don't care if mommy was coming home. They just care that nanny is leaving, and they're crying. They don't want to let go of nanny. So in my mind, I see
Mm.
many of these, many wealthy Caucasian homes here in Forest Hill that have the same story. If not for the Filipino nannies, a lot of these kids, and I see a lot of Caucasian kids that are raised by Filipino nannies, more polite, more very good kids, very polite in the playground. They don't. Some of them that doesn't have Filipino nannies are a little bit more rude. So a lot of in my church, a lot of moms, Caucasian moms, are so thankful for Filipino nannies for treating their kids like their own. I'm talking too much on this podcast, madam. This is what.
No, this is what I like. I like to hear people's stories and have them talk. That's what I'm more used to.
No, but you're turning it around on me. I know you're very skillful.
It works
You're
for
very
me.
But yeah, that's my observation. But you have half Caucasian kids too. Did you ever in the early days? Did you ever thought about having nannies to look after them?
Um, a little bit, I'll admit, but honestly, do you think I could tell my mom and dad that I would, that we're going to have a nanny and leave our kids to be cared for by somebody else? But also, my parents, they decided as soon as when my husband and I had our first daughter, my parents were retired, but they're still living in Winnipeg, and so as soon as we had Maya, our older daughter, they moved here, and they were
Your
like,
parents.
okay, hmm
Oh, so your both
yeah,
your parents are here. So I remember you said your dad passed away 4 years ago.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But they moved here. Like they just also my ate was living in Winnipeg, but she was planning to move with her family to Toronto too. They live in Mississauga. But so my parents were like, yeah, so we're moving and drop Maya off when you go to work and we will watch her. So and we were so blessed too because in Toronto it's so difficult to and it's so expensive
yes.
to have um, a, whether it's a nanny or daycare or any of that stuff. So we were able to have my parents, and they took care of our daughters, so both of them. And my husband and I were often so busy. My husband travels a lot, and so if then I would be a single parent when my husband's on the road, but I have my parents to support me and to help with the kids. So we thankfully were never in a situation where we really needed. And
Too.
I would, yeah, I'd be terrified to tell my parents that we're going to hire a nanny.
Yeah, the parents, the generation of your parents and my parents, they're all hands on, and I tried to do that as well for my little girl when she was growing up. At least I was able to do it for 4 years
Mm-hmm.
before I went back to school. But that's awesome. I'm surprised because I'm a digital marketer, not really a media person. But I got sucked into doing the community media for our GTA Filipinos because there's not a lot of people stepping up to do it. So I also had an opportunity to interview Minister Ahmed Hussein, the family, and he's all about the family. So I asked him about a policy in many European countries. They actually pay some parents big money to have kids so that one parent can stay home. I know in Sweden they've done that, and because the family reunification sort of kind of got messed, and I found out what happened was in many years Canada didn't want to prioritize family reunification program because it's not the immigration program that brings in a lot of economic value. So, but there was
Mm-hmm.
a study that I presented to the minister. I said, according to this website, the study that if we bring the grandparents to Canada for many of these immigrants, then they don't have to hire a nanny and both parents can go to work, actually generate two incomes and two tax accounts. There's two taxpayers per family, which is actually an economic um, benefit. So, but you know how politicians are when you bring up things like this. They the default answer. Oh, we'll look into that. Good suggestion. Thank you. So this is
Yes.
what we do, right? Anyways, but I think yeah, bringing the grandparents will really help here in Canada. Quickly, madam, I know we're going to pass that 1 hour already. Uh, quick, rapid questions. How was your growing up in Winnipeg? Some highlights of your summers. What are summers like for you? Summer vacations.
Well, growing up in Winnipeg, I mean, also we're immigrants, right? So there was never anything like, summer camp or things like that. But I think what I remember most, Winnipeg has beautiful summers, or maybe we appreciated them more because we just knew how cold it would get. So I just remember being outside all the time, and with my mom saying, don't go too far and stay on the sidewalk, don't ride your bike on the road. But I would still meet my friends outside, and we would play all day. And that's kind of how we did it, right? Because we didn't have a lot of money either. So there weren't any like activities that we could pay for my sister and I to be involved in. So we just went outside and found our friends. And I think that was, sometimes you don't need to pay money to
Yes.
give a kid some fun.
Yes.
We found fun, and we just did it all on our own.
Um, a lot of kids would have best friends growing up, right? And sometimes they make that stronger bond during the summer. Did you make a
Yeah.
lot of best friends in Winnipeg, and do you stay in touch?
Yes, I have my best friends now, and we don't, only one of them lives in Toronto, and the others are, one lives in Calgary, and the other one's still in Winnipeg. But I met them in junior high, and we have been best friends ever since. And in fact, last year we uh, all traveled to Calgary because one of our friends, got married, and so we all reunited, and we were called the Legacy Friends because we had been best friends for so long. So if you can
Wow.
imagine, like grade 7 to now, we have been friends for about almost 40 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
40 years. That's
yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah.
yeah, legacy best friend for sure.
Hmm.
And Christmas is coming around. It's around the corner. What are
Hmm.
some of your most memorable Christmas as a child? Question one, and question two as a mom.
I think as a child, what I appreciate more now is the whole tradition of going to church on Christmas Eve. I know a lot of Filipinos do that, and it's a Catholic. I think it's a Catholic thing to do Mass on Christmas Eve. We aren't Catholic. We're Christian, so we would still go to a service
Simbang
on.
gabi.
Hmm?
Simbang gabi? Was there Simbang gabi back in Winnipeg?
Yeah, yeah. And so it would mostly be, and there's a very large Filipino population in our congregation. So we would have the Christmas Eve service, and then go home and eat. So that's what I remember most fondly from Christmases as a child. And Christmases as a mom, it's kind of like I've really embraced kind of the North American traditions of Christmas morning and opening presents on Christmas morning. We love our my daughters love Christmas. It's like,
You
when are
hanging
we
up
putting up the tree?
you're hanging up stockings, and I think we have
Yeah,
a little bit of that back home. We hide some presents in the stockings.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that's, I mean, but it's mostly a North American or a Western Christmas tradition, which we do. Like right here is where all the stockings are going to go
over
next
your
week.
by the fireplace. Um, do you cut your own tree or you buy a plastic tree?
I wish we could go and cut our own tree, but we buy a real one there's a garden store near our house, and we go and buy our tree from there every year. And honestly, well, we always had the artificial tree when I was a kid. I love having a real tree. Like
Yeah,
it
it smells.
smells like Christmas.
Yeah, it smells like Christmas, like a spruce or like yeah, Canadian Christmas trees are awesome. Have you you know you have ninongs and ninangs when you were a kid in
Hmm.
Winnipeg? I would imagine. One of our tradition is Mano po ninong, Aguinaldo po ninong, Aguinaldo po ninang. Did
Yeah,
some of your kids experience that? Do they have ninongs and ninangs?
they do, but then their ninongs and ninangs are our relatives. So it's and they haven't I haven't raised them with the manupo,
Uh,
but it's interesting because my daughters are more interested in learning and living a Filipino culture. So my older daughter recently discovered manupo, so she'll do that with my mom now, and my mom is very entertained by it. And they have interest in learning Tagalog. Um, so I think it's mostly actually of their own accord that they're kind of
yeah,
becoming more interested in learning about our cultural practices. So yeah, Manopo is relatively new for us.
you know what's fun? My experience, my personal experience with a Caucasian church. Me and my wife, we went to a different Caucasian church than what we, and we're the one who brought in the Filipinos in that church to a point that it became half and half Filipino, half white. Eventually, after maybe 7 to 10 years, but in the beginning, it's predominantly Caucasian. But we brought in the culture. We start calling our elder men kuya, so kuya Ron, tito, yeah, so we kind of, because they want to learn about the Filipino culture. And one of our young pastor, the son of the pastors, found out about the mano, and then he started o sige mano mano. We started that in initially predominantly white church, and then we do the mano mano. Some of their families that come over for Christmas, they find what's going on here, like
I love
what's
it.
the kuya, what's the tito. We brought that to our church, and it was fun to kind of have that merging of culture and sharing of culture. What is your favorite se- uh, so I would imagine Canadian culture is a big turkey on the table for Christmas Eve dinner. So I would imagine you have that. But any Filipino dish that is present on the Christmas table?
Lots. Oh yeah, there's all whenever we have when our family gets together, there's always something. And my mom especially makes sure that we have bansit, long life, for every occasion. So there's always that. Um, and then and then my mom too makes really delicious lumpia. So we always have lumpia. And actually, last year, not for Christmas, but for New Year's, we did the Mayan and had our
Okay.
all Filipino.
It just
Oh,
got
was it glitchy?
deteriorated. Yeah, your audio become like blah, blah, blah. But yeah, just your last sentence, it wasn't clear. If you could,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Well, one thing we did. Well, one thing we always have Filipino food when we have any occasion or family gathering, and my mom's always the one who says you have to have pancit because that is life, and so you have that for birthdays, Christmas, everything. But last year we did the kamay kamayan for New Year's.
Oh,
It was so good, and it was so beautiful too. So we put
it,
all of the food on the banana leaves on the
oh, I see.
table.
Okay, okay, okay. It's called the boodle
Boodle fight.
boodle fight. It was
Oh yeah,
it
that's
was
what we
actually an
did.
American tradition that we during the war in the Philippines. It started there, but it became a tradition. That's awesome. You did the boodle fight.
Yeah, we did, and then I kind of said to my sister like, why have we never done this before? Like it was just such a great it was such a great meal. Everybody loved it because it was such a novelty, right? No, you don't need forks, you don't need spoons, use your hands. And
There's
my daughter was like, okay, great.
I remember being the first time being in a Kamayan in the Philippines. Our American relatives coming home, they actually have a Kamayan in one of the five-star hotels in Makati. Like it's a really elegant Kamayan
What
that
do they serve?
I can't remember now, but I remember tiny servings too. But it was Kamayan and posh, very nice chandeliers, and I think in Manila Hotel, I think what it's called. But our
That's
American
a fancy hotel, isn't it?
yes, I think it's five-star actually. That's where the
Yeah.
Beatles stayed when they visited Imelda Marcos. There's a funny story about that. But is there a dish you can prepare yourself, a Filipino dish that you can prepare yourself?
I've one my daughter's favorite Filipino dish is sinigang.
Sinigang.
Yes.
Is a baboy or sinigang manok or chicken or beef or
It's usually manok because that's what they have the most
available?
chance of eating. They're not such a big fan of baboy
Right.
because you put the bones and the fat and all of that in the sinigang too. That's what makes I can tell them that's what makes it taste good. But I do manok, and I make that for them because I thought it's my mom makes it, and my dad before he passed away, he was the family cook. He made all of the dishes.
Wow.
So I think I just took for granted that there would be delicious Filipino food all the time. So I didn't bother
To learn.
to learn. And now I'm thinking, okay, I probably shouldn't let my mom do all the Filipino cooking. I can make the other dishes, but the one I probably make most is sinigang.
One of my favorite Netflix thread of videos to watch are the cooking shows or the foodie
Me too.
yeah, the foodie genre. And there's a lot of I was trying to get the footage for you to show us the B-roll today to discuss. But there are some celebrity chefs in America who said the next wave of American fast food or American uh, foodie are Filipino food. I don't know if you heard that, but in many cooking shows, they feature a lot of Filipino food in the States.
I don't know why it took them so long. I mean, Filipinos have been in North America for generations now. But and you even see it in Toronto, right? There's a lot of very popular Filipino restaurants. One of the ones we went to is La Mesa on Queen West,
La Mesa.
and yeah, and I did a story with the one of the chefs who started that cuisine or that restaurant, and he says too that it's the Filipino cuisine is the in
The Inn thing. Yeah.
food right now. And I kind of asked him too, like, why are we just discovering this now? Like everybody claims to know a Filipino. Everyone claims to know they love pancit, they love adobo. So why isn't it more mainstream? Um,
Well,
but part of it goes back to just us being humble and not really going out there and saying,
exactly.
this is the best food you'll have. So
Yeah.
you should
Well,
try it.
some restaurant owners will approach me and ask me, "Hey, what can we do for digital marketing for my restaurant?" Because I get since I was only involved in the community from 2018, but then I was like a flood of connections, and I met a lot of Filipino restaurant owners. One of the owners of it's called Islas by East East
On
downtown.
Gerard, yeah,
Gerard, you know it.
I've
This
been there too. Yeah.
Jokoy's favorite place when he comes and perform in Canada,
Oh,
in Toronto, he would go to Islas.
well, it's
That's
delicious. So I'm
it's
glad.
delicious, right? But many Filipino restaurant owners, other than Isla is very good when it comes to marketing, but they want to target Filipino only. I mean, not only, but that's the first number one in their list. Find the Filipinos. If there's some Caucasians who come here, well, okay. But I think we're about right. The brand is already right for bringing it out there. I remember me and my Singaporean friends. They love coming to Korean restaurant. I love Korean food, but one of this Singapore professor, he insists. You guys, you Filipino have a dish called, which is the counterpart of kamjatang. It's like, what? We have Filipino dish that is kamjatang. I don't know if you know what kamjatang is. A pork bone soup, very popular among
Oh,
the pork bone soup is called kamjatang. And he insists, your sinigang is your kamjatang. Your sinigang na baboy is your kamjatang. Well, maybe we should brand it that way. The Filipino kamjatang is the sinigang na baboy. Well, he insists because there's a lot of the Singaporeans love the Filipinos too in Singapore. But we
but
should.
every Asian cuisine has been in the spotlight except for Filipino cuisine. And people used to ask me, well, what's Filipino food like? And then I would be like, well, it's kind of like Thai, but without the spice. And it's like a lot of Chinese influence. And it was even hard for me to kind of describe what the cuisine was. And so I'm just like, you just eat, just taste it, just eat it. Like that's
Once you're in, you'll never go back.
yeah, everyone loves it.
That's there in 2003. I used to teach English, like practice English with Koreans, and I was also leading a group of young people for my church as a sort of like pastoral role. So I had at one point there's like 50 kids that I'm caring for, university students at U of T. Many of them Singaporeans and Koreans. In Korea, the government actually funded in 2003. They funded their pop culture in Korea, and they called it the Hallyu or the Korean Wave. And that's why we have a lot of Korean appreciation for Korean food. That's why we're heard of Gangnam Style and the Wonder Girls, and Korean pop culture become mainstream in North America. The government actually funded it so that Korean films will be consumed.
Oh,
Should we do that? Should we do that as well? The
yes.
Filipinos should do that.
Yes, I
Yes,
think maybe set aside a little bit of the political infighting and come together and fund a campaign to.
the pop culture.
That's a great idea. I mean, there's precedent. It's successful. I mean, I'd never heard of K-pop until a couple of years ago, and
Oh,
that's probably why.
K-pop has been big in the early 2000s, and I think I seen only now in Toronto. There's a lot of people binging on K-pop series on Netflix. But I remember I've been binging on K-pop in 2003. Me and my
See,
wife.
and we only know about it because of the government campaign.
Yeah, the government. Well, pop culture needs to be funded for sure. I think we need to do that. I'm gonna give you some names, madam, and then for our winding up, tell me your impression and what you think about their success in the world stage. Um, because there is a Filipino wave. I think there. Would you agree? I think I think there's a Filipino wave. Nobody's calling it the Filipino wave, but in music, in dance, in entertainment, in movies, I think there is this guy from Vancouver, Manny. He's on the new Top Gun movie. He's a Filipino guy. He's one of the I forgot his name, but all right.
And he's
Anyway,
Canadian or
he's
from
Canadian,
Vancouver.
Filipino, Canadian. Yeah,
That's great.
he's on
Yeah,
the.
I'm not surprised. There's a lot of talent in the community.
What do you think of Manny Pacquiao?
I I have to like every time he has a fight, my family gets together and we watch and we cheer for him. Everything, all of his other views aside, his story as a boxer is just one of those incredible underdog um, stories. Like you
Yeah,
can't. I've yet to find someone who says I don't like Manny Pacquiao.
Pacquiao.
He's
We had people who says, "Well, Manny Pacquiao is not going to be amounting to anything. But we have that mentality, what we call bandwagon, when at least 60% of Filipinos huddle around somebody, and then the rest comes.
I know, but that's what makes him such a great story, right? Is that
Yes.
not everybody was convinced that he would win anything, and look how successful he is. And of course, everyone else gets on the bandwagon after he's a champion.
Unfortunately, I think that the retirement is actually coming to realization now. I hope there's somebody who will follow through. But yeah, I remember even when I was working in a financial district, all the consultants are like, Manny Pacquiao should be the next president. At that time, I was still like, no, no, he's a boxer. He cannot be president. But then now I feel like, he did such a good job as a senator, though.
But I think when you move somebody in, especially someone who is already so famous, and you put them in a government role, and I have to admit as well, I am not, I don't follow Filipino politics very closely.
Mhm.
Um, but oftentimes when someone gets elected because they're already a
Yeah.
star,
Yeah.
I think it puts a pressure on them, because they're so used to just this, um, undying love and from people, and then you get into politics regardless of what party or what country, um, you become very vulnerable to a lot of criticism, and it's interesting how people handle that. I don't know how Pacquiao would. I just think the Philippine politics in the Philippines is a very difficult landscape to
Yeah.
maneuver.
Yeah.
And I want him to just kind of have his legend as this boxer who was one of the most successful boxers in the history of boxing.
In the
Never
history
mind.
of boxing. Yeah, in the history, and the entire history of boxing. The only reason I came around thinking about his leadership is we actually had in our history called a president in the Philippines named Magsaysay, and there was a song sang in the streets when he was, because he's a farmer. He was a farmer, and they made a song. They say Mambo Mambo Magsaysay. So I think the first populist movement was during the Magsaysay movement. He is a humble, ordinary folk, an ordinary Joe became a leader. So when I associated Manny Pacquiao, he could be a Magsaysay. So I thought, oh, okay, that could be a good idea.
Well,
Um,
if he has the, yeah, if he can have the impact of a unifier,
yes, yeah,
then I think that would really benefit, the Philippines, as opposed to someone who's really divisive.
yes, yes. I think everybody comes around Manny Pacquiao, especially on his fight. I don't know yet on his politics, but we'll see. You heard of Leia Salonga, Madam Marivel? Do you know her?
Yes,
You know Leia
Miss
Salonga.
Saigon
It's like,
herself.
right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I notice about Filipinos who gets on the center stage on the world stage, initially they have that culture shock moment. For her, what I notice is when, because Filipino young ladies are very, the Maria Clara culture that we have, right? Very protected. Young women, the dalagang Pilipina is very protected, very conservative, very she's not verbal, or she's not out there showing her feelings or her attraction. But then when she became the actress for Miss Saigon, the first thing that she faced a challenge is the kissing scene, because her
Mm.
role is a prostitute, right? And so that I remember having her struggle like that, uh, but then she overcame it. But I see that there's a lot of Filipino talents that can be a par with Hollywood stars, but there's that hurdle. We don't want to cross that line, right? Sometimes they don't want to be, too sexy or too, So in a way, I kind of like, yes, I'm on the fence on this, because yes, you don't want to be too vulgar, because in our culture about vulgarity and you know what I think you know what I mean about the Filipino conservatism. But Is that a hurdle that we should overcome, or should we keep that conservatism?
I'm of two minds on that. I mean, the entertainment industry in the Philippines is so massive, and there's definitely a commonality, and in as you're saying, like there are a lot of risque um, scenes. There's a lot there's risque like storylines.
Yes.
Lots of dramatic things happen in shows, but there's still the very sort of chaste innocence around a lot of it. But it's massively successful for a reason. So I think, but in order to, I guess, achieve a level of success outside of the Filipino entertainment industry, I think it, like what Leah kind of had to do is, set aside all of the cultural things that you're raised with, but also look at it as, I mean, this is your profession, this is your craft,
Hmm.
this is your art. And in order to pursue that, I
Hmm.
think you have to make some major shifts in some cases. So I think to do, especially in the American entertainment industry, anything goes really.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of have to. That might be the trade-off.
Yeah. Just to be there. Yeah. So, anyways, just maybe one word impressions. I will read names, madam, so that we can wind down. I know I need to pick up my wife at 8 o'clock.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so there are others that are Filipino, but they don't really capitalize that I'm Filipino. They're not out like that. There's two characters that I can think of. Bruno Mars, he's not like, oh, I'm Filipino, I'm proud Filipino, but everybody loves him because of his craft. The other side is Apple, the app of Black Eyed Peas. I don't know if you know him, but
Yeah,
he's all about I'm Filipino everywhere he goes. He dons on the Filipino sun and star bracelets and hats. He's really proud of being Filipino, and both these brands draws thousands on concerts. Uh, maybe just impressions. Bruno Mars.
I can't hate Bruno Mars. There's like, I mean, he is so talented. He's just a talented performer, and before him, before he was a performer and popular, he was responsible for a lot of hits and for a lot of other popular
Oh, as a writer, yeah.
yeah, and a great producer too. So I think anytime somebody acknowledges their Filipino heritage, all of Philippines celebrates, because it's we're just so humble that when somebody says "Ako ay Filipino," and then everybody cheers.
Yes.
So the few times I think he did concerts in the Philippines and his family went back to watch him, and I saw a video of that, and that
Oh,
just
good.
made
Okay.
me feel proud too. Apple Diap, whenever like the Black Eyed Peas were the biggest band in the world a few years ago, and
Yes.
he put Filipino Tagalog lyrics in his rap
Oh, yeah.
songs in their albums, and so respect to him for that. And he also, I think, he had a difficult growing up
Yeah.
too, and so for him to still, and he's American, and
Mhm.
so for him to still pay tribute to the Filipino culture, I think is really inspiring. And I loved the Black Eyed Peas too.
That's awesome. Ornel Pineda actually goes to my when he comes to Canada. My wife's relative cottage is where he goes to to chill after a concert because one of their friends are his bandmate when before he become popular. So Arnel Pineda is the lead singer of Journey. You probably heard of the story. And Journey has
Yeah.
been what, around since the 60s? It's like
Yeah,
a
incredible.
right.
I know the fact that he won that opportunity to join a legendary band and deliver. That's the other thing.
Yes,
It's like
deliverance. Yeah.
he fit right in.
Hmm.
Like Journey is this super group from the 70s, and um, to be able to just kind of seamless transition into being able to be the lead singer for that band. Yeah, again, like just
It's amazing.
yeah, that's
Proud
testament to the talent.
Eric Spoelstra is the head coach of the Miami Heats, and he is the very first Asian to lead an NBA to championship. Any words about Eric Spoelstra, man?
I recently, I think in the bubble when they were when the NBA was doing its season in the bubble, I saw Eric Spoelstra do a post game um, interview, and one of the reporters, I don't know if you saw this video too. One of the reporters was Filipino, I think from a Filipino publication, but he asked him a question in English, but Eric understood that either that the publication was from the Philippines, or maybe I can't remember if he had a little bit of a Filipino accent, the reporter.
Oh, okay.
But when Spolstra answered, he said, "Well, first of all, maraming salamat."
Oh,
And again, like this guy is competing for a championship in the NBA and still recognizes that um, this part of his heritage and can honor that. I mean, I'm a huge basketball fan, like every
oh,
Filipino
wow.
is, so that's not
Yeah,
news.
that's a
But
yes.
how proud are we that this he's won multiple championships
Yeah,
and he's
and
part Filipino.
every time the Toronto Raptors and the Miami Heat will be playing, I'll be so torn.
Yeah. I know. Well, just wait until there's the 7 foot Filipino who's in a training camp or something, and they say he's going to make it to the NBA.
Oh,
So
really?
wait,
Now?
like yeah,
Oh,
he's
wow.
just a teenager right now. I think he might be either just starting university, but very recently, yeah. So he's being looked at as one of perhaps the next big things, an actual like from the Philippines. So not even a Filipino American.
Well, madam, I don't. Maybe you heard that Serge Ibaka is not with us anymore, but Fred Van Fleet will stick around. I love Serge though. I wish he would stay. Like,
I know, I know. We were also excited and happy that Van Vliet re-signed, and then they hit us with all of this heartbreak afterwards. Like Ibaka's gone, Gasol is gone.
Gasol is gone too. Oh my gosh, I didn't know
Yeah,
about that.
to the
I
Lakers.
to the
Los
Lakers.
Angeles is taking all of Toronto's talent.
My goodness, L.A. because well, a quick Filipino Canadians, madam. Of course, Dr. Ray Pagtacan is a family friend. One word or a one sentence impression.
Courageous trailblazer. Um, and not just on the political front. I mean, he was one of the earliest Filipino doctors, at least in Manitoba. So he blazed a trail on a number of fronts, and just a very like, yeah. I mean, he was a father figure for a lot of people, and really somebody to look up to, and the first in Manitoba anyway that let Filipinos know you can have a hand in government and politics, and you can play a role.
It's awesome. We have also the very first senator. Uh, his wife is part of our media pool. She's actually there on our group. Senator Tobias and Verga, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the very first. Have you met him?
Yeah, we attended a couple of events together in the Filipino community over the years, and he was also. I mean, he made it a point to try to inspire people to get involved, Filipinos in the community, and tell them about the value in being in government. Um, and I just wish we had more of that, so people could see that it's a it's an honorable profession.
Sorry about my camera. Very quick. I'll change the battery, but you can still hear me. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I
like.
can hear you.
All right. So while I'm changing the battery, there is a young lady, Martina Luis Ortiz, who had the opportunity to sing the very first new version of the national anthem during the Canada 150. She's actually the daughter of my coworker, and so one time in Niagara Falls, when we had to go to, because we were working. Sorry, let me just put this on. I'm sorry, I'm having a little struggle here with
Technical difficulties.
like, yeah, it just wouldn't go into the mount. All right, there you go. I plug it in. All right. So she had an opportunity to actually play date with my daughter, even though they different age.
Aw.
Because we are going to a gala with her parents. Are like my coworker. My Her dad was my coworker, and so she sang the new national anthem, Canada 150, and was a great performance. Have you seen it? What do you think of her? She's also a TV actress now on CTV, I think.
Yeah, she's in a series. But you know where I first noticed her was she is also the anthem singer for the Maple Leafs.
That's right. Yes.
So that's where I first saw her. And you know how whenever you see a fellow Filipino, you know for sure that they're Filipino. And it was one of those moments like, look, there's a Filipino. Um, so that was my first, that's where I first saw her. But also, her voice is incredible. Like
Yeah.
she's so talented. Um, and I'm so glad that she also, you know, could represent our community during the Canada 150 celebrations. Like I think she's going somewhere. It's good that she's got a series now, and um, I hope anyway because she's so talented.
Yeah. She actually I think she was only 11 when when she sings for our corporate events. And she was powerful already then. And another Filipino that marked 150 is Ariana Cuvin, who actually designed the logo for Canada 150 as a Filipino.
It just shows how, you know, broadly talented the community is, and I'm just glad they're getting opportunities to be recognized for that and to really showcase the talent that there is. And it's like you said earlier in this conversation, you know, like we are a part of building the nation,
Yeah.
and it's nice to get for such a humble culture. It's nice to get attention like that on a really big stage too.
I'm going to skip on some of them. I mean, last three names before the final one. You might have met him. He worked for CBC. He's part of this mini series I'm doing, a Filipino Canadian podcast. I already interviewed him, but only audio. So we're gonna redo another one with video as well. Romeo Candido is a TV film producer director, and he produced the second gen, I think, on Omni TV and CBC. And he's also producing for not producing, but I think he's a writer for Netflix. Have you met Romeo Candido?
No, I wish I could though, because it's I mean Netflix has hundreds and hundreds of shows, but it's still really difficult to get a show with them. So the fact that you can do that and to come up with or to work for a production that's involved on with Netflix, I think that's a huge accomplishment. So if I met him, I would ask him about that. Like, what did it take
Yeah,
for you to land a writing gig on a
I think
Netflix
I'll
show?
make an introduction maybe if you want to. I know that he was about to produce his own. What do you call that place where all the plays are in Western Ontario?
Oh, Stratford.
Stratford. Yeah, he was before the lockdown. Everything was already set. He's gonna have his own play,
Oh,
his own play, and then the lockdown came. So, but yeah, I will try and connect you guys.
that
Um,
would be amazing.
yeah, Eileen Devilla is our Toronto's medical chief.
Oh,
What do you think of her?
our hero of all frontline heroes. I've met her before, and I mean it's nice because you know when you meet in person, it's all of these things that like I was kind of fangirling her when I met her because she's just so accomplished. And this was before COVID,
Mm.
but I did get a chance to interview her for my show. Um, it was a pretty lengthy interview because it was more about how she was doing and how she was handling, like personally, the pandemic. And you know, same with her. She for I want to say 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks as well, lived had to stay in a hotel
In a hotel.
because her husband is also a physician, so
Mm.
he was fighting COVID too at his work, and they just didn't want to have any exposure um, because both of their jobs are important, and so she was in a hotel. So she would go to City Hall, the hotel, City Hall, hotel every day for. And you remember we were doing those press conferences every single day for the first few months. And she's also just so steady, and she's the perfect person to lead the biggest city in the country, to lead the public health decisions. We are in such good hands with her. I know that just from having spoken to her, like nothing can phase her, and the fact that she's Filipino is just another reason for the community to be proud.
To
Like
be
I think
proud.
Toronto has fared so well, and a lot of it is because of Dr. Davila.
That yeah, very very makes us all proud to listening to her. There's another news anchor on CBC that we that makes us feel giddy every time we see him. Michael Serapio, I think joined CBC in 2010. Any words about Michael Serapio?
Michael and I are friends. I'm giddy anytime I get a chance to be around him because he is one of the loveliest people I have ever worked with at CBC, and he's also sometimes you don't really get a sense of this with news anchors or reporters because mostly everything is so serious. But Michael is hilarious. He has such a sense of humor, and I think he would be like a practical joker. Like he's a prankster,
Wow.
and yeah. So I Michael and I are, and I think part of it is because there aren't many, at least news anchors who are of Filipino heritage. So whenever we see each other. We always talk in Tagalog,
Oh
and
wow.
he shows me the latest like Philippine Tagalog video that he saw, and we'll sing together. And it's really nice to have a compadre at work.
Oh, he your compares, eh?
Well, just not formally,
Not from,
but
but you kept okay.
honorable. Yeah.
Michael Serapio has similarity to one of my older brothers who's animated and funny, and so when I see him, it reminds me of one of my elder half brother. If you are not Marivel Taruc as a journalist, as a fact finder, and as a broadcaster, Mama Mahayag or reporter, and if you're reporting about Marivel Taruc, what would be how would you be reporting about Marivel Taruc?
Oh, um, I well, hopefully, I would say, this immigrant kid from Winnipeg's rough North End um, decided she wanted to be a journalist, and um, perhaps at the time, against some odds, managed to turn that dream into a reality, and also end up working at the place that helped her family learn about Canada and learn English, and that's at the CBC.
That is awesome, and I promise you that would be the last one. But I have three extras that I won't mention all of I will just mention, but we won't get into it. Just I guess an honorable mention. Rico, he's on. We won't have time to get into it, but he was formerly BBC news anchor from Singapore and now the chief news anchor of CNN Philippines. He's my Facebook friend actually. I'm gonna invite him one time,
I
and
would love
also
to do his job.
oh yeah, and there's Jessica Soho. I don't know if you know GMA 7 news anchor.
News. Mhm.
Jessica Soho is actually a Peabody awardee, and she was called the Asia's journalist of all times. So even in the Philippines, they make international um, dent on the international scene. But one that I would like to ask you just a few words. I did a little research about Joe Taruc. Joe Taruc,
Yes.
I mentioned to you, I asked you in our pre interview before the Talakayan if you are related to Joe Taruc, and I think I remember you said maybe a distant relative. But Joe Taruc, growing up, I've been hearing about Joe Taruc on AM radio, news talk radio in the Philippines. It's everywhere. Every time there's a typhoon, every time there's a coup d'etat, or every time there's a political event, everybody tunes in on radio more than TV when it comes to news that matters. And Joe Taruc is a household name. Apparently,
Mm.
Joe Taruc also in his early days did co-anchoring with Noli De Castro, and Noli De Castro is a household name we call Kabayan Noli from TV Patrol, ABS-CBN. He's been known everywhere. Kabayan Noli is like every day, everybody watches Noli De Castro, and he became vice president during the time of the presidency of Estrada. He was the president of Estrada. So your family is connected one way. There was a saying 6 degrees of separation, and we can touch everybody on earth. But the Taruks are recently, we also gave honor to Lito Taruk, who is a broadcaster many years in Winnipeg, and also their boss for a while, who just passed away last Wednesday. So, last words about Joe Taruk before we close.
What can you say about Joe Taruc other than a legend? Um, I wasn't so aware of him growing up, and I mean, I wish I could say, I looked up to him and I wanted to be like him. But I only sort of later in life was told about Joe Taruc because everybody asked, "Are you related? Is that why you're a journalist?" Um, and we knew about him too. And my dad also listened to his broadcasts. And what I am proud that I share a name with someone who was a real speaker of truth and who wasn't swayed by the government of the day or any party affiliation. He was a true definition of what it means to be a journalist, objective, um, only gave the facts, but always sought the truth. So to share a name and a profession um, with somebody like Joe Taruc is something that I'm honored to do, and I take a lot of pride in actually.
Well, this is an awesome time. As usual, madam, I would promise you an hour, but it would always go past. I apologize again one more
I'm
time.
Madaldal, I told you.
And me too, actually. I think I am too. I am madaldal, and
It's
I'm
perfect.
very curious, very interested in listening to everybody's story. And your story is one that will be etched in my memory, always be in every time I'll have an opportunity to encourage a new migrant or a new arrived Filipino. I will tell them about the story of Marivel Taruc all the time.
Hmm.
Thank you very much for this wonderful and precious, valuable time. To those who are listening to us right now, they're getting to know you more because of this long form podcast. But there's more. There's more that we can know about you. There's more that we can ask you, but just there's not enough time to tell all the stories. But last words for those who are listening to you and getting to know you right now. Any last words for them, madam?
I think I would just say, as as the Filipino community, because we have contributed so much to Canada in particular and to the growth and um, to the benefit of this country for generations now. Um, I think now is the time to recognize those contributions and to be proud of those contributions so that the younger generation will know and will have that confidence to be able to say that um, I'm a Filipino and I can accomplish many things. And because of that, Canada is a better country for it. So, as a community, it's time to take our place and our rightful place in this giant fabric of Canada.
And with that, for all our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Joey Salvador, and this has been the Filipino Canadian podcast. And our guest was the wonderful and legendary and historical figure for Canada, the very first journalist and news anchor at CBC, Crown Corporation, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Madam Marivel Taruc. With that, thank you very much, Madam, and see you again soon. Sometimes.
I hope so, hopefully in person sometime.
Yeah.
Maraming salamat, Joey, for your insight too. It's important work that you're doing for the community, so we should be proud of your effort as well.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much for giving us this time, this valuable time. And we'll see you again soon. We'll connect you to you by email or chat. God bless. Have a good
Anytime.
bye.
Bye.
Bye. So I'm gonna cut. Cut. Thank you very much, po, madam. Uh, I
That
was
was great.
yeah, I was trying my best to really go through my outline as fast as I can, but madaldal din po kasi ako. And if you bring two madaldals together, I think an hour is not enough.
The kwentuhan just will go on and on and on. Yeah.
But that's our nature, kwentuhan po, no? So I've been holding my washroom. I need to run to the washroom because I've been drinking a lot of coffee, and
Oh my goodness.
I have to check if my wife is still waiting for me or if she taken the bus. She became very spoiled with hatid sundo. So I told her, last minute. This is not supposed to be her shift, but last minute she took a shift, so she's on shift right now. But
Well, give her my regards and tell her I'm sorry I kept you too.
oh no, that's she knows. I told her that I'll be having this, so she might have to wait. Um, I would love to have Michael Serapio and some of your behind the cameras, maybe feature story as well. If you,
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea so that more people can know that
yeah,
this is a viable career option. And they would be great.
I would love to feature all the Filipinos who's making important contribution to our society and tell their stories here on the podcast if possible.
Well, do you want me to let you know or connect you with any
Yeah,
of them?
with any of them po. With Michael Serapio, maybe siguro January na, but maybe we can start talking, um, by email. Just kind of get ready if January. We actually started a sports talakayan as well.
Cool.
So the sports, I remember your husband is in sports, but
Mm-hmm.
we were talking because Omni TV, Blue Jays, Pinoy. I don't know if you heard of Pinoy Blue Jays.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You
It's
seen
so
it?
cool.
So
Yeah.
two of the sports anchors, part of our media pool, and then we started to create this sports talakayan, and we were bouncing around ideas. We said, why don't we get a big splash? First guest will be Nick Nurse. So we're saying, let's go, let's try, let's assemble the Talakayan panel first, and we'll find a way to get Nick Nurse to, because I think he recently wrote a book, so he might
Yeah.
want to promote it. So maybe if you know anybody who knows him,
Well, and
paalala lang po.
you might have a good chance because everything is virtual now, right? So it doesn't involve him having to go anywhere or
Yes,
whatever, right? He can just,
stay at his home.
yeah, and or wherever, if they're in Tampa for the next little while
Oh,
playing the season, it might be more convenient actually to to get him. Let me think about who would.
Yeah,
I
if you
just know their media. I just know the Raptors media person, but it might be a start because that's who you'd probably go through.
yeah, maybe they can point me to the right direction. And the Philippine, we are big basketball fans. If we can get Nick Nurse, oh, everybody will just Filipinos.
I think that's the next. That's the next place is to try to go into the professional sports, especially the NBA, because I think they recognize how much interest there has always been from the Filipino community. So
Opo.
they might that might help
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, I think it will inspire a lot of our Filipino, especially Tito Mike, or he's fondly known in the community as Coach Mike. He actually brings bunch of kids every year to the Philippines to compete on the college league. So Tito Mike Cruz is the Blue Jays baseball anchor, news anchor on Omni TV,
Oh,
and
did
he's
they do a
fondly,
documentary about him? I just saw a
not
trailer.
not me, but me. I don't know if somebody did.
Okay,
I'm not sure, but yeah.
that's a
By the
great
way,
story.
I look at the Filipino Canadian Wikipedia. I'm gonna learn how to edit that Wikipedia because I don't know how to edit the Wikipedia. But I didn't see your name yet on the list. I saw Michael Serapio and even Kuya Mike is there, but why did they not put you? So I'm gonna learn how to edit Wikipedia and I'll put your name.
Okay, as long I mean it's only good because people will know and
Yeah,
hopefully it will get more people into this business.
for sure po. I'm gonna run, madam po, kasi
Mhm.
I need to use the washroom.
Mhm.
But thank you again so much.
I'll send you the email of the Raptors media person.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, I will
You can
get
start there.
myself and start there. She will
Okay.
point me to the right direction. Thank you po. God bless. I will edit this maybe December 14th. Hopefully, December 14th, I will have it out.
Okay, let me know.
Thank you po. Okay, bye-bye.
Salamat, Joey.
Salamat po.
Bye.